and BINnews.com.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the dagger?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers are on the brink of a third consecutive elimination in the divisional playoffs. They lost 6-5 to the Padres in San Diego in Game 3. The Padres are up 2-1 in the best of 5. The Dodgers offense broke down after the third inning. No runs and only one hit. A must-win Game 4 for the Dodgers tonight. USC women's basketball star Juju Watkins has signed a multi-year extension with Nike. The new contract, which includes a signature shoe deal for Watkins, is one of the highest paid endorsement deals in the history of women's basketball. Watkins, who grew up in Watts, is getting ready for her sophomore season at USC. The New York Liberty will face the Minnesota Lynx in the WNBA Finals. Game 1 in the best of 5 is Thursday night in Brooklyn. The Liberty are going for their first WNBA championship. Minnesota is going for number 5. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
I need your dollar, that's what I need.
KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates small businesses, the enduring lifeblood of our community, with the launch of the KBLA SMB Marketplace. For the first time, small to medium-sized businesses will have an opportunity to promote their goods and services on KBLA and take advantage of our powerful reach and local marketing power. The SMB Marketplace is hosted exclusively on KBLA1580.com and is accessible from all our social media channels. Whether you're a small mom and pop restaurant, a car dealership, or a professional practitioner, we invite you to join in this new KBLA Talk 1580 initiative to promote your business. As a black-owned small business, you don't want to miss this unique opportunity to gain new customers on KBLA Talk 1580. For more information, contact us today at smb@kbla1580.com. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
And if I share with you my story, would you share your shadow with me? Time to get it. Hey,
wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war and poverty. Oh, wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. They're the ones who's coming up, and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. Na, 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 na.
KBLA Talk 1580, your election information station. Welcoming now the District Attorney for the City and County of former District Attorney for the City and County of San Francisco, former Assistant Chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, George Gascon. Good morning.
Good morning, Dominique. How are you?
Good to talk to you again. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How about yourself? All good?
Yeah. You say you're doing very well. Looks like quite a tough election, but tell me, let's start with something positive. What are you most proud of that you've been able to accomplish despite recalls and sort of insurrections within your own staffing? What are you most proud of that you've achieved?
Yeah, look, I'm most proud of the fact that we have maintained a balance between public safety and equity, and we have stopped using the death penalty. We stopped sending kids to adult prison. We are holding police accountable to levels that they were never held before. We have now prosecuted about 156 law enforcement officers, including about 15 for use of force. And at the same time, in the city of LA, I understand fears up. The reality is crime is coming down. We all had a problem during the pandemic where crime went up, and not only in our county, but around most of the country. And we're seeing reductions, in the city of LA now is experiencing significant reductions for the last 2 years. We know there are parts of the county where we still have a challenge. We have 88 cities, and it's not even across the county. But we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and at the same time, we're not over-incarcerating people of color. We're holding police accountable, and frankly, I feel very optimistic for the future.
Yeah. When you talk about these ideas of like not incarcerating kids or prosecuting kids as adults because they're not adults, or not enforcing the death penalty, reducing the use of gang enhancements, where do these progressive policies come from?
These progressive policies come from years of research and science that informed my platform in 2020. I put together groups of community leaders, academics, attorneys, people that were impacted by crime, and we look at each of the species as a standalone, and we saw the destructive nature of prison enhancements and how they did not achieve any safety, but they sent black and brown men to prison for decades, more and above anything that we normally have done years ago. We saw in LA County that we were not only the most carceral county, but we saw the death penalty in LA County, and then my predecessor, 23 men of color, were sent to death row. Hundreds of kids that were sent to adult prison, and we looked at all this stuff, and we looked at the science that was there available to us, and we decided to create policies that were shaped by science and data, and obviously adjust as it was necessary, but not to neglect, years of knowledge that were being completely neglected in this county, as well as many other parts of the country, by the way.
And the voters resoundingly agreed with those policies. It seems like they were and are in alignment with the movement in this country to remake our justice system to be more fair and equitable for everybody.
They did, they did. And, I tell people, because, people now say, well, the polls are not looking good for you. And so, look, in October of 2020, my predecessor was leading the polls by around 15 points. And when the elections were done and all the votes were counted, we came up with almost 54% of the votes. So the voters see it, and I believe that they will again. I'm running against a Republican fear monger that is going around telling people that they're not safe in their community. He's lying to them. I mean, these are people. Look, while I was working with our future president, Kamala Harris, and when she was the district attorney in San Francisco, and I supported her to become the attorney general. I was the only major chief of police that supported her to become attorney general. My opponent actually endorsed and was working for the Republican that was her opponent and defending, billionaire tax evaders. And while I was creating the first independent investigation bureau to look at police misconduct, he was defending the most corrupt sheriff in LA County history, and he did so without any compunction. So this are the contrast, and he's very clear. He will bring us back to the years of mass incarceration. He continues to use very Trumpish language. He talks about my having blanket policies, which is not true. But when you ask him questions like the LA Times did during their endorsement meeting, he says, I will endorse the law to the fullest extent. Basically, that's code word for saying I'm going to mass incarcerate people, because the fullest extent is death penalty, is adult prison for kids, is gang enhancements, is all the things that brought us to a really bad place. And this is a guy that comes from a very, very privileged background, and he doesn't understand what it's like to have to think about where the money for the rent is going to come, or whether there's going to be money for rent. See, but I know that because I grew up in that environment. He doesn't understand what it's like to be an immigrant, or quite frankly, what it's like to be a poor person struggling, whether you're black or brown. He's disconnected from that reality, and accordingly, he sees the world through that lens of extreme privilege.
So much to unpack in what you just said. It's interesting you talk about him supporting Kamala Harris's opponent, because when your opponent was on the show, he said that he supports Kamala Harris. And I find it kind of ironic or baffling that many in the black community are hard on Kamala Harris because they feel she was too tough on black men, on crime, and yet they are supporting Prop 36 and supporting Nathan Hochman. Make it make sense, DA Gascon.
Well, it doesn't make sense. Look, I mean, first of all, let me go back to my opponent for a second. I'm going to take Prop 36 and the conflict that seems to be in people's mind. My opponent in 2022 was running as a Republican for Attorney General, also on the fear-mongering platform. And when asked by the media whether he had voted for Trump or not, he refused to answer the question. Now, you ask him now, he says he never voted for Trump. And very conveniently now, he is saying he's voting for Kamala Harris. But, everything else that he's done until recently, right, points to a different direction. But now going to this conflict that I think that people in the community have with Kamala, look, we're all a product of our environment, okay? And Kamala was a district attorney at a different time. And a lot of things that we know today weren't quite as clear when she was a district attorney 20-some years ago. But even during that time, she was engaging in very progressive ideas for the time, such as dealing with drug offenders and giving them a second chance and giving them diversion. And she never used the death penalty. And that, by the way, it was painful for her because even Senator Dianne Feinstein, audited her on a case involving the killing of a police officer, where she refused to use the death penalty, and Dianne Feinstein and the cops were pushing for the death penalty. And it turned out to be that she was right. That was not the appropriate approach. But I see people now supporting Hochman and talking about Prop 36, and they forget that Prop 36 would take us back to the days where thousands of black men and black women will go to prison for possession of small quantities of drugs. Because, if you're addicted to drugs, or if you're poor and you're using drugs, by the way, and most of our community across the board, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, they're using drugs. The difference is the rich and the more affluent use the drugs in their home. The poor often have to use it on the outside because they don't have a home. And they're going to get arrested 3 times, and the 3rd time they're going to go to prison for the same conduct that, more affluent communities are not going to. And people forget that when Prop 47 came in, there were about 40,000 people, most of them, by the way, were black men, that were in prison for possession of small quantities of drugs. Look, when I was a cop, I remember stopping kids at Watts, and cops would grab a coke pipe. They had no drugs at all on them, but they would scrape the pipe, and if there was residue of crack, that was a felony. And we put black kids in prison all day long for that before Prop 47. And Prop 36 is going to take us back to that world. They're saying, we have treatment. Well, they don't have any money for treatment. In fact, Prop 47 gave us about $80 to $100 million a year for treatment because it was a savings from the prison for not sending black and brown people to prison. And that money is going to go away because we're going to put it back in prison and go right back to sending poor people to prison because there is no treatment, right? Even under Prop 47, we don't have enough money for treatment, and that's what the $80 to $100 million that are coming every year. The issue of smash and grabs, that has been resolved. Look, I mean, the legislature with bills that I supported just passed a whole bunch of bills, over 10 bills, that address the repeat thieves and all those things that people criticize Prop 47 for, which I question. But let's say that was a legitimate problem for retailers. We're addressing that. But the other component of Prop 36 is going to start sending people to prison for simple possession of drugs, not for trafficking, not for sales, but for possession of drugs. And that's going to be poor people that cannot afford to use it in, the privacy of their home.
Talking with District Attorney for LA County, George Gascon. We'll continue the conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power. Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today.
Whoa, it's you, the Capital One Bank guy.
That's what they call me.
Mind if I get a selfie?
Yeah, sure thing. Say no fees or minimums on your Capital One checking account.
Wow, that's a keeper. So, where are you heading?
I'm off to spread the good news that Capital One helps people keep more money in their wallet with no overdraft fees.
Oh, you're the best Capital One Bank guy.
Hey, mind if I get a selfie?
Sure.
Say, Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One NA, member FDIC.
Hey, what are you doing up on the step stool?
About to clean these light fixtures. The whole family's coming over. And if there's even a speck of dust in the house, my abuela will find it.
Here, I got a Swiffer duster to help with that.
A Swiffer what?
A Swiffer duster. It has this cool extendable handle that reaches 6 feet to get high and low, with fluffy dusters that easily trap and lock dust.
So, no more step stool?
No more step stool.
Easily trap and lock dust from hard-to-reach places with the Swiffer duster. Love it or your money back.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down. Get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
On your period, sudden gushes happen without warning. But now, you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears. Thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable with Always Fear No Gush.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Talking with the Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon. So many things to unpack, as I said, from what you've already said. You referenced your upbringing and contrasting yourself with your opponent. You actually are an immigrant. You actually came up, you were born in Cuba and came here as a young child. How does that inform your work?
Look, I grew up in Southeast LA, okay?
Yeah.
When we saw the sheriff coming by, we ran the other way. And we ran the other way not because we were doing anything wrong, but we ran the other way because we knew that we were going to get stopped, we were going to get jacked up, and generally things were not going to go well. That's my experience growing up. He was the president of Beverly Hills High School. He has a stepfather who's a billionaire. He grew up in extreme wealth, and he's lived his entire life in extreme wealth. You know, I was a high school dropout. I went to the Army. I went to Cal State Long Beach. I was an LAPD officer. I work in the communities, the same communities that I live in. And I got to see the world from very many different angles. I understand how difficult it is to police a community, but I also understand how hard it is when the police doesn't respect the community. I understand what it's like not to know whether you're going to have the money to pay the rent. He doesn't understand any of that. When I'm looking at my work, I'm looking at the work much more broadly. For me, public safety has many, many tonalities because I understand how in this seeking safety, we can over-police communities and we can harm our youth. I understand that there is a balance. Look, I used to tell people all the time, I used to tell cops this all the time, we get the most support when it comes for funding for policing from the black community. Every single time there is a bond for additional police resources or buildings, those bond funds will always pass overwhelmingly in the black community. The black community or the Hispanic community are not anti-police, but they're anti-abuse, they're anti-disrespect. And my opponent will never, ever understand that because that has never been his environment. He looks through a world with a very different lens. You know, he just came out yesterday on social media and he says, all you got to do is protect your family. Think about this for a moment. This is a very individualistic way of looking at the world. That's not the way that most people in the black community that I know or the Latino community look at the world, because we know that if we don't take care of our neighbors may not be there to take care of us, and we're more than likely going to need them at some point. And that reflects in the way he talks about how he would do the work. He talks about, you know, he will enforce every law to the fullest extent, or he would seek everybody that goes to prison to be in prison for the maximum sentence possible. You know, first of all, he doesn't control when somebody's going to get out of prison. That's not the DA's job. But the reality is, it's a narrative that speaks to a very privileged world that will never understand some of the things that other parts of our community face. And unfortunately, those are the parts of our community that most need good law enforcement, good prosecution, but they need to be respected. They need to be treated with fairness. They need to be treated with balance, and he will never get that.
The Los Angeles Daily News endorsed your opponent, and they say that from 2020 to 2023, violent and property crimes reached new heights not seen in many years. The number of violent crimes surged from 54,600 to 61,193. Homicides, robberies, and aggravated assaults all increased on his watch. Property crimes did too. How do you respond to that?
Well, look, I mean, the LA Times endorsed me, and the LA Times put it very clearly on, you know, I am being blamed for many things that have nothing to do with the DA's office. But let's unpack crime for a second, right? Because it's important that we do that. Crime started to go up in January of 2020. I did not become the DA until December of 2020. But there was something that was going on. It was called the pandemic. And crime was going up everywhere in the country. In fact, there were 35 counties in the state of California, all with hard lock-em-up DAs, where crime went up from 2019 to 2023. But here's what we saw that the Daily News doesn't tell you, or that the statistics from the California Justice Department doesn't talk about. LA County is kind of unique. We have 88 cities. We have 44 police departments. And crime has not gone up at the same rate, and crime is coming down at different rates. In the city of LA, we have seen crime come down for 2 years in a row. In the city of Pasadena, crime has been coming down. There are many cities around the county where crime has come down, and there are some where crime has gone up. Now, clearly, if you were the victim of a crime, crime went up for you 100%. There is no question about it. But the reality is that unless we understand that the picture of crime is a much more complex crime, by the way, per capita crime in those counties around us that the Daily News doesn't talk about, their crime has gone up at higher rates per capita than ours. But they don't talk about that, right? Because it doesn't fit the narrative of the conservative front that wants to fearmonger, that wants to promote messaging that, you know, provides, quite frankly, a lot of cover for Republicans. Look, I'll be very straightforward. If you believe that the death penalty is okay, if you believe that kids should be sent to adult prison, if you believe that race doesn't matter when it comes to the criminal justice system, if you believe that police should not be held accountable, he is your guy. don't vote for me. But if you're against the death penalty, if you believe in proportionality, if you believe that there's unfairness in the system that has been plaguing the way that we send black and brown people to prison, if you believe that safety doesn't have to involve over-policing black and brown communities, then I'm your person. And when you look at the crime numbers, you see a very different picture than what you're hearing from some of those folks.
Yeah, well, we're hearing that nobody's getting locked up. It's interesting, as a former assistant chief of LAPD and a cop and, Army veteran, that you are perceived as soft on crime. And one of the talking points I hear is that you're just letting everybody out of jail, that nobody's going to jail.
Right. So let me kind of walk you through another myth that is being promoted by some of the people on the right. We have prosecuted over 100,000 serious and violent crimes in the last 3.5 years, on average, with the last 10 years in the office. And people that are committing serious crimes are going to prison for decades. We have gone after organized retail theft, and 92% of the cases the police has presented to us, we have prosecuted. And again, some of the people that are involved in the higher echelons of the organized retail theft are going to prison. We are prosecuted about 89% of all the residential burglaries presented by the police. But, people sometimes don't realize the DA doesn't make an arrest, right? The police have to make an arrest. They present it to the district attorney, and then the district attorney makes a decision. But we're making those decisions at rates that are actually higher than they were in the past. But we're doing other things that my opponent never did, and other things that, quite frankly, my predecessor never did. We're paying attention to environmental issues like the poisoning of the soil and the water in Jordan high schools and Watts by allied metals, where both of my predecessors, Jackie Lacey and Steve Cooley, were presented case and ignored, and we just got a 21-count indictment against Atlas Metal. We're paying attention to waste theft, the biggest theft crime in our county, over $1 billion every year that are taken away from workers, which are mostly black and brown and immigrants. We have now returned about $3 million in back wages to over 300 employees, and we're continuing to do the work. We are dealing with so many other things at the same time that we're doing the traditional work that has always been done. The problem is, I know I hear the narrative. By the way, I get blamed for misdemeanor prosecutions in the city of LA, but I don't handle misdemeanors. So those lower level crimes, like, shoplifting in the city of LA, that's not handled by my office. But
that's the city
I
attorney.
am not doing, that's the city attorney. But I tell you what I'm not doing in the places where I do have misdemeanor jurisdiction, which is some of the smaller cities in the county. We're not going after somebody driving with a suspended driver's license and sending them to jail for a few days, as my predecessor did and my opponent would do. And by the way, that was a bulk of our misdemeanor prosecutions, because we know that poor people often cannot pay the fines and fees in order to get their license renewed. And if you take their vehicle away and you send to jail for a few days, then they lose their capacity to even go to work or take the kids to school. Again, there's so many things that people that come from the privileged background that my opponent has do not understand that, I do, because I came from that background where, my parents had to struggle to be able to pay things, right? And we know that so many of the people that drive without a license, suspended driver's license, are either here undocumented, and they're fearful that even if they get a license, that's going to be used for them to get deported, or they're black and brown people that cannot pay their parking tickets. They get to renew their license doesn't get renewed, and then they're driving around with a suspended license. Now, if you're driving with a suspended license because you were driving drunk, we will prosecute you, but we won't do it for the other things, right? And those are the things that differ from what I'm doing and what my predecessor did and what my opponent will go back to doing.
Talking with District Attorney George Gascon, and we've got news, traffic, and sports here, then more straight ahead on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
I'm Ree Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump's campaign is denying claims he made multiple phone calls to Russia's Vladimir Putin since leaving office in January of 2021. The allegations are in Watergate journalist Bob Woodward's new book, War. That's slated to be released next week. The Las Vegas Strip will look just a little bit different. The iconic Tropicana Casino Hotel was imploded overnight. The controlled demolition took just over 22 seconds. The Oakland Athletics future baseball stadium will be built on the current Tropicana site. And that's the latest. I'm Ray Harris on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers are on the brink of a third consecutive elimination in the divisional playoffs. They lost 6-5 to the Padres in San Diego in Game 3. The Padres are up 2-1 in the best of 5. The Dodgers offense broke down after the third inning. No runs and only one hit. A must-win Game 4 for the Dodgers tonight. USC women's basketball star Juju Watkins has signed a multi-year extension with Nike. The new contract, which includes a signature shoe deal for Watkins, is one of the highest paid endorsement deals in the history of women's basketball. Watkins, who grew up in Watts, is getting ready for her sophomore season at USC. The New York Liberty will face the Minnesota Lynx in the WNBA Finals. Game 1 in the best of 5 is Thursday night in Brooklyn. The Liberty are going for their first WNBA championship. Minnesota is going for number 5. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Black Women for Wellness and Stand LA are standing up against harmful oil drilling in South Los Angeles. Our Bad Neighbors campaign exposes the serious health risks of drilling in our neighborhoods. You've seen the billboards, posters, and coffee sleeves around South LA. Now join the movement to protect our health, our families, and our future. Visit bwwla.org/no-drilling to learn more and get involved. That's bwwla.org/no-drilling.
Chevy, all the things 2024 Truck Season Radio 30, code GWMR0294000.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You'll be able to, or you can even just, with impressive towing, incredible bed and tailgate functionality, and multiple powertrains, Chevy trucks have what you need to get things done. When you want to do it all, Chevy's got you. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
What make you? Yeah.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
And I'm speaking with former Assistant LAPD Chief and former San Francisco District Attorney George Gascon. When he spoke on my show last week, your opponent said that you have not made any adjustments to what he called blanket policies regarding getting rid of enhancements and other changes that you've made to long-standing policies of the district attorney's office. Would you like to address that?
Yeah, look, my opponent lies and misinforms so freely that it's hard to keep up with his lies. Him and Trump share a lot in common. We have made adjustments, and I did them at the beginning when I first became the DA simply because I did not have the support of the staff that I could trust. I didn't want to see my policies being swallowed by the exceptions. I did not want us to be seeking the death penalty. I did not want us to send kids to adult prison, and I could not trust the immediate staff that I have. But as I put new people on board that are part of my team, we have created committees where we look at these cases on a one-on-one basis. We have, for instance, we have alleged over 11,000 gun enhancements in the last 3 years. Now, that's about 40% of what my predecessor did. But, my predecessor would find some black kid down the street that had a possession of a gun, not committing any other crime. And if they had a gang enhancement hanging to them because they were a registered gang member, they would prosecute them and add all this stuff and send them to prison for 10 years. We're not doing that. My predecessor would sometimes have a case where there was a crime where somebody alleged that a gun was present, but nobody could find the gun. And they would go ahead and throw the gun enhancement. And generally fell, by the way, upon black and brown kids. What I do is when a gun is used in a robbery, when a gun is used in assaulting someone, we are alleging those enhancements. We are alleging in special circumstances and sending people to prison for very long periods of time when it is appropriate. But we're doing it with a very measured way. But, my opponent is engaging in the same type of fear-mongering that we see at the national level coming from Trump and others. In fact, he loves to use gaslighting and he loves to use nicknames. I mean, it's comical because there's so many parallels in the way his campaign is being run and that of Trump, which is not surprising, by the way, because some of the people in his campaign were the people that were running Trump's campaign in 2016. So it kind of attacks. Look, I'll put it very simply, okay? I think that there are two clear choices here. And, my father used to say, follow the money, follow those that support you, and that will tell you who this person is likely to be. My opponent is supported by billionaire developers, by police unions. Those are the people that have endorsed him. Those are the people that support him. Some people in my office that are against this policy. But let me tell you who's supporting me. In addition to the Democratic Party, in addition to most labor groups, in addition to most of the Democratic clubs, I got people like Holly Mitchell, Sidney Kamlager, Steve Bradford. I have California Black Women's Democratic Club. I have the Black Young Democrats. I have Black Women for Wellness. These are people that are supporting me, and there are dozens and dozens of others. But I'm raising this up because I know I'm on a black station, and I want the black community to understand. These black leaders are supporting me because they believe in the work that I'm doing. They believe in what I'm bringing to the table, and they believe that in the work that we're doing, we're supporting the betterment of our black and brown communities. And these are people that are leaders in our community that have been trusted for years because people know where they are. So I urge you to look at these endorsements when you're thinking about who to vote for and think about what that means, because those people do not just give out their name lightly. They do it because they believe in what I'm doing and they believe in what we can do together and what we are doing together.
Speaking of black leadership, there are some of us in the community, in the black community, who were baffled by the charges against Councilmember Curran Price. Speak to that.
Yes, look, I mean, this was a case that started under Jackie Lacey, and there's no question that Councilman Price, there were some allegations, there were investigations that were conducted by the LA Times, actually, that go back to 2017, 2018, and that's when Jackie Lacey started her investigation, and we just simply follow through that. Now, I cannot talk about the case because it's an open litigation, and there's still a lot of things that need to be done in that case. But it's a case that there are allegations that needed to be reviewed. The case was filed based on that investigation, and we'll continue to work through it. And I understand how uncomfortable it is and I get it. It's
Yeah, I mean, it's not just
we have.
uncomfortable. It just seems very, it seems like an overreach.
Well, I cannot get into the details because
Right.
there's still a lot of information that is not public, right? But let me just tell you that, when Jackie Lacey started the investigation, there was a good basis for that. And it was presented to me, and I agreed that there was a good basis for that, and that's why the litigation continued to move forward. And again, as the litigation evolves, we will see, and this is still ongoing. And hopefully, we'll see, the air will clear and people will see and evaluate. And obviously he has a right like any other criminal defendant to aggressively defend himself. And, at the end of the day, that will be determined by the legal process.
Yeah, let's circle back to enhancements for a second here. I think there's a perception that that there, because you've moved away from using gang enhancements, that means people aren't getting a real sentencing. Our DA's race has somehow become a national issue. There's an article in The Hill where they quote someone saying your soft on crime policies have led to people, they're quoting from an ad from your opponent actually, because
right.
They're saying because people are released earlier than they're going back and committing crimes, like this, girl, a young girl who was sexually assaulted, in another situation of someone who had their sentence potentially reduced that ended up committing a crime with a firearm. Speak to that, please.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, the people that are committing serious crimes are facing long and are being prosecuted and convicted are facing very long terms in prison. We're not giving anybody any get out of jail card. What we do know is we know that gang enhancements, for instance, have been used in a very racist manner. Let's take gang enhancements, for instance. They have been, even the Democratic legislature and the Black Caucus determined that the California gang files were full of inconsistencies and full of racist entries. And, here in LA County, just before I became the DA, there was an incident involving Metropolitan Police officers from the LAPD that were putting kids in gang files, and they were justifying it by saying that the kids were admitting to be gang members. And these were all Latino kids, by the way. An investigation by the LAPD led to review on body-worn camera, and this were many cases, over a dozen cases. And what they found out is that at no time did any of those kids that were being placed in the gang file were gang members. And consequently, that case was presented to our Office of Prosecution. Actually, it was filed under Jackie Lacey, but we took the case forward, kind of like what we did with the Karen Price case. And when the case went in front of a judge who was a former prosecutor said, well, I'm not sure that LA police officers have been trained to determine when somebody's self-admitting to something. And he let them go, which is another part of the problem. So when you're committing a robbery, when you're committing murder, with or without the gang enhancements, you're going to go to prison for a very long time. But the gang enhancements add another level of complexity to it because often they are there because of data that is in files that has very questionable entry process. And rather than try to discern whether this was done right or not, which you have to do a case by case on hundreds and hundreds of entries, I prefer to stay away from that. But on the other hand, things like gun enhancements, which clearly shows you either have the gun or you didn't, and you either used the gun to commit the crime or not. If you use the gun to commit the crime, we are alleging those enhancements. And people are going to prison for a very long time, regardless of enhancements. All the data, by the way, in addition to the fact that has been determined that Cal gangs, which is where the gang enhancements information derives from, are so problematic. All the data shows that all this does is add up extra years over very lengthy sentencing already, and that is mostly visited upon Black and brown communities.
Talking with District Attorney George Gascon. He is currently serving Los Angeles County, and he is in a bid for re-election. When we come forward, District Attorney Gascon, I want to talk about this perception that your office doesn't do enough for victims, and I'm hoping you can share some solid statistics that will help people orient themselves in terms of how you perceive your accomplishments and the effectiveness of your office. That's straight ahead on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit ca-smp-volunteer.org.
Did you know every 3 seconds someone is a victim of identity theft? LifeLock wants to give you helpful tips to protect your identity this Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Adding multi-factor authentication, like a text with a security code, is one way to boost your security. But for comprehensive protection, trust LifeLock. LifeLock alerts you to suspicious uses of your personal info and steps in to resolve issues that arise, guaranteed or your money back. Protect yourself with a 30-day free trial at lifelock.com. Use promo code NEWS. Terms apply.
Mommy, want to play a game with me and Dad?
Mommy's not feeling good.
You need to vaporize that cold.
Vaporize?
Yeah, with Dayquil VapoCool. It's Dayquil plus a rush of Vicks vapors.
Whoa.
Come on, honey. Let's let Mommy rest.
You guys are amazing. And so is Dayquil VapoCool.
Dayquil VapoCool, the vaporizing daytime coughing, aching, fever, power through your day medicine. And to vaporize sore throat pain, try Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone, and should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
The smarter way to clean your floors. It's time to make the swap. Swiffer Power Mop.
Introducing the new Swiffer Power Mop, the all-in-one tool that gives you a mop and bucket clean in half the time. The solution's built right in, so no heavy bucket, and the pad has hundreds of scrubbing strips to get deep into grout. Don't mop harder, mop smarter.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
And I'm happy to be in conversation with District Attorney George Gascon of LA County, former DA for San Francisco, Assistant Chief of Police for LAPD. DA Gascon, talk to me about victims. I know we've spoken about this before on the show. The way that you are dealing with crime victims has been criticized, and I want you to explain the kinds of programs that you have in place.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I learned when I became the DA is that there was a lot of criticism. In fact, there was a poll done in LA County with victims of violent crime, and overwhelmingly they complained that they were re-traumatized by the office, that the office did not deal with their trauma, and that often they were ignored unless they cooperated with the prosecution. By the way, most people forget that most of the victims of violent crime happen to be African Americans and Latinos. And these were the people that the office was not serving very well. I went ahead and I asked the U.S. Department of Justice to do an audit of our services, and they confirmed many of our practices were a problem. We also created a Victims Advisory Board, which is a very diverse number of people from throughout the community, people that have themselves been the victims of violent crime or have lost loved ones to violence on the streets. And overwhelmingly, they also agreed that we needed to become more trauma-informed and that rather than having a lawyer run that unit, that we should have a clinician. So we went out, did a nationwide search, wound up actually recruiting a woman here from our community who have been working in South LA for many years and with the Department of Public Health. She runs the unit now. She's a clinician. And then we went out and hired 30 additional victim services representatives who spend a lot of time providing trauma-informed care. We no longer condition victim services on people helping with the prosecution. We've done a tremendous amount of work to not only keep our victims informed, but actually to bring more victims into the fold. We're serving thousands of victims every year. But in addition to that, some of the things that we're doing that were not done before is that we're actually going out into the community with our victim service representative. We're reaching out. We're looking for people that often don't even know that they can avail themselves of the services. They may have the capacity to access state funding for medical services, relocation, and other things. So we're proactively also seeking to help people. Also, one thing that was never done before, we consider them to be victims. People that lose a loved one to police violence, even if the police violence was justified, we reach out to all of them because we understand that their family members that just lost someone, and they need to be also attended to, because one of the things that we know is that most of our people that hurt other people are people that themselves have been traumatized, sometimes many times over, and they have been victimized. So we want to make sure that even if you lose a loved one to police violence, that you know that we're going to be there for you to provide services. And again, even if that violence is justified, we're not conditioning the services on how that occurred. This is all stuff that was never done before.
You want to share some numbers, some statistics, some data that affirms the work you're doing?
Absolutely. So here's the things that we're doing. Look, in addition to doing the traditional work, as I mentioned before, 100,000 plus prosecutions of serious and violent crimes, about 15,000 gun enhancements. Here are the things that we're doing that were not done before. Let's talk about hate crimes. We are leading the state in the number of hate crime prosecutions. Our filing rates, which means the cases that we move forward with, about 80% of the cases. The state average is about 50%, and that was the average in the office before. We have taken out 36 people out of death row. By the way, most of them African-American, people that have been placed in death row, sometimes people that have learning disabilities and problems, they should have never been put on death row. We have now resentenced over 300 people, and by the way, out of those people that we resentenced, only 4 have recidivated or committed another crime. We have now exonerated 15 people. Those were people that were wrongfully convicted, and they have been in prison for decades. In fact, collectively, over 300 years of prison term by people that were wrongfully convicted, and we continue to look at those cases. I created a labor justice unit. As I mentioned before, we have now helped about 350 victims get back wages and insurance premiums. Nearly $3 million in money has gone back. We have also gone after things like environmental crimes. You know, we're working in South LA, we're working in Wilmington and other areas. And I talked about Atlas Metal, but Atlas Metal is only one of the many cases that we're handling. We have over 250 environmental cases. Again, this is the other side of our work that was not being done that also has a tremendous impact. When you consider environmental crimes like the Atlas Metal problem, where you have black and brown kids that for generations have been exposed to lead levels that the EPA says are 75 more times than what any human being should be close to. And when you understand that lead actually impacts your brain development and that lead can stay with you for 3 generations, you can pass it on from grandparents to from fathers to kids to the next generation. And these are the things that also cause tremendous harms in our community that were never attended for before. And by the way, that my opponent will never do because it's not on his wheelhouse. He doesn't see those problems.
Do you see you've been victorious in 2 recall attempts? You've had prosecutors who believe in the old way of doing things suing you. Do you believe that this is part of a backlash against progressive prosecutors that's happening nationwide? How do you place that?
Yeah, look, I mean, Dominique, there's no question that there's there are entrenched interests in mass incarceration. You have private prisons, you have prison guards union, you have police unions, you have people that provide services to prisons and jails, you have people that build prisons and jails. So much of that goes away when we start reducing the number of people that are staying in prison or the number of years that people stay in prison. And we see that being one of the primary drivers around, the backlash, right? We want to go back to the place where we were financially benefited from, and quite frankly, from financial and economic benefits come political benefits. That's how you pay politicians, that's how you influence elections. So there's no question that there's a huge backlash. And there's another component, and that is, as human beings, we're often comfortable with what we've always done. A lot of the people that have been prosecutors in the last 20 or 30 years, they were very comfortable, sending people to prison for very long periods of time. That's what they grew up on. And all of a sudden you have somebody saying, well, we need to rethink that, right? And that creates a friction, and that is a friction that certainly we've seen in my office, but we've seen it in other offices too. And what I said to the communities, look, we have problems. There is no question that we got crime issues that we got to deal with. But going back is not the answer. Going back to the days of mass incarceration that we're still living with, going back to the days of racist police practices and prosecutions, going back to sending the mentally ill to jail because they're mentally ill, going back to sending kids to adult prison, going back to not looking at police misconduct, those are not the answers to the future. We need to move forward. We need to continue to evolve, fix where we have problems, but not by going back to the things that we know that haven't worked in the past.
We just got about 1 minute here, really a little less. What would you like to leave us with?
Look, I believe that when you look at my work, but more importantly, often I think that it's important to look at who supports me, because that will tell you, where I stand on so many issues. And that's what I go back to. And again, I'm focusing right now on the Black community because it's a Black station. I could do that in other communities as well because I have very broad support. But when people like Holly Mitchell, Sidney Kamlager, Stephen Bradford, Black LA Young Dems, Black Women for Wellness, Black Women Democrats, these are clubs and people that are supporting me. They're supporting me because they understand what I'm doing, and they believe that what I bring to the table is what we need in the future. So I urge you to look deeply. I understand you hear the emotion. I understand you see the TV ads. But when you look behind the curtain, the options here are very clear. It's a mass incarceration, going back to the old days, or continuing to move forward to a different future. And I hope that if you do that, you will vote for me.
District Attorney George Gascon, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Dominique. Thank you for the opportunity.
Tavis Smiley's up next. He's got a full lineup for you. I'm Dominique DiPrima. History is now, and we are making it together. Until tomorrow, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Ree Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump's campaign is denying claims he made multiple phone calls to Russia's Vladimir Putin since leaving office in January of 2021. The allegations are in Watergate journalist Bob Woodward's new book, War, that's slated to be released next week. The Las Vegas Strip will look just a little bit different. The iconic Tropicana Casino Hotel was imploded overnight. The controlled demolition took just over 22 seconds. The Oakland Athletics future baseball stadium will be built